Some secrets are hidden from everyone. Some secrets are hidden from only one person. And somehow those are the ones that hurt the most. Because when someone lies to you, at least you know where you stand. But when someone keeps you in the dark while looking at you like you mean something to them, your heart starts creating answers before your mind ever gets the chance. I didn't know I was a secret. Not at first. If I had known, maybe I would have walked away before things got complicated. Maybe I would have stopped myself before late-night conversations became the favorite part of my day. Maybe I would have stopped myself before I started smiling every time her name appeared on my screen. But life doesn't really give warnings before it changes. Sometimes it just places someone in front of you and waits. I met her on a Thursday afternoon in the campus library. I wasn't there because I suddenly cared about studying. I was there because my apartment Wi-Fi had stopped working again, and I had an assignment due the next morning that I had ignored for almost a week. I was sitting near the back of the library with headphones on, pretending to focus while reading the same sentence over and over again. That's when someone sat beside me. Not across from me. Beside me. I looked up for a second, expecting to see one of the dozens of empty seats still available around us. Instead, I saw a girl setting her books down casually like we had planned to meet there. She looked over. "Don't make this weird," she whispered. I blinked. "What?" She smiled. "You looked at me like I stole your seat." I stared at her for a second. Then I looked around the almost empty library. There are like 50 empty chairs. She nodded seriously. "True." Silence. "Then why sit here?" She looked at me for a few seconds like she was thinking carefully about her answer. Then she smiled again. "I don't know." I remember staring at her after that because something felt strange. Not bad strange. Just unexpected strange. People don't usually sit directly beside strangers when there are dozens of other seats available. Normal people don't do that. Then again, maybe she wasn't normal. Over the next hour I noticed little things. She tapped her fingers against the desk when she read. She kept moving strands of hair behind her ear every few minutes. Sometimes she'd stare at her screen and make tiny expressions like she was silently arguing with whatever she was reading. Then suddenly she leaned toward me. "Okay, I need an honest answer." I looked over. She pointed at her laptop. "If someone says they accidentally forgot to do their part of a group project, they're lying, right?" I laughed quietly. "Absolutely." She looked offended. I knew it. I raised an eyebrow. "You're the one who forgot, aren't you?" She stared at me, then slowly smiled. Maybe. That should have been it. Just a random conversation with a random girl. But then the next day I saw her again. And then again after that. And eventually something started happening that I didn't notice right away. I started looking for her too. The weird thing about attraction is that it never arrives dramatically. Movies lie about that. There's usually no slow motion moment. No background music. No lightning striking the sky while your heart suddenly realizes something important. Real feelings happen quietly. They sneak into ordinary moments until one day you wake up and realize someone has somehow become part of your routine. After that first conversation, I started seeing her almost everywhere. At least that's what I told myself. Maybe campus wasn't that big. Maybe our schedules were similar. Maybe life was just playing one very specific joke on me. Because somehow she'd appear at exactly the right moments. At the coffee shop when I was waiting for my order. Outside class while I was checking my phone. Near the library entrance when I was leaving. Every time she'd smile like seeing me was expected. Like we had known each other much longer than we actually had. Eventually our conversations stopped feeling like conversations between strangers. They started feeling easy. Dangerously easy. We started texting. First it was random things. Memes. Complaints about classes. Pictures of terrible cafeteria food. Then somehow those messages slowly turned into actual conversations. Long conversations. The kind where you look at the time and suddenly realize it's 2 in the morning. The kind where you start learning small things about someone without even trying. I learned that she hated horror movies because she got scared too easily. I learned that she loved rainy days. I learned that she always listened to sad songs even when she was happy. I learned that she had a habit of overthinking everything. Everything. I asked one night while we were texting. "Everything," she replied. "Like what?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Like whether people secretly leave because they stop caring. I stared at my screen. For some reason that answer felt heavier than I expected. So I typed back, "The right people don't." I don't know why I sent that. Maybe because I meant it. Maybe because I suddenly wanted her to know it. A few seconds later she liked the message. Then sent, "You're different." I stared at the screen for a long time. Because those 2 words shouldn't have mattered. But they did. Way more than they should have. After that things changed. Not dramatically. Just small things. She started sitting closer. She'd remember random things I mentioned days earlier. She'd bring me coffee without asking what I wanted because somehow she already knew my order. One afternoon she handed me my drink and smiled. "No sugar." I looked at her. "You remembered." She looked confused. Of course I remembered. Of course. That stupid phrase stayed in my head all day. Because people don't usually remember little things unless they care. Right. Or maybe I was imagining things. Again. Then one Friday night we were sitting outside campus watching people walk by, when something happened that completely caught me off guard. She was laughing at something I said. Actually laughing. Head tilted back, eyes closed, smiling. Then suddenly she stopped. And just looked at me. No words. No smile. Just looked at me. My heart immediately started acting weird. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "You're staring." "No, I'm not." "You literally are." She looked away. Then smiled to herself. "Sorry." Silence. Then quietly, "You just make me feel calm." And for a second I forgot how breathing worked. Because people don't say things like that. Not casually. Not unless they mean something. I looked away before she noticed the expression on my face. Because suddenly one thought had entered my head. And I hated it immediately. I think I'm starting to like her. And I had absolutely no idea that the worst part of the story hadn't even started yet. For the next few days I kept trying to convince myself I wasn't falling for her. I failed. Completely. Because once you start noticing someone, it's impossible to suddenly stop. You start paying attention to things you never cared about before. You notice their favorite songs. You notice the way they smile differently when they're genuinely happy. You notice the tiny pause before they answer serious questions. You notice everything. And I noticed everything about her. I noticed that she always wore oversized sweaters when she was tired. I noticed she played with the sleeves whenever she felt nervous. I noticed that sometimes she'd stare at people around us without actually seeing them, like her mind had gone somewhere else. I noticed that sometimes she looked sad for absolutely no reason. And I started noticing something else too. Sometimes she'd disappear. Not physically, just emotionally. One minute she'd be laughing with me, talking nonstop, sending 10 messages in a row. Then suddenly nothing. Hours without replies. Short answers. Different energy. And every time it happened I'd tell myself not to overthink it. But overthinking things was becoming my full-time job. Then one night I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when her name suddenly appeared. Asterisk, come outside. Asterisk, I sat up immediately. Asterisk, what? Asterisk, asterisk, just come outside. Asterisk, asterisk, it's almost midnight. Asterisk, 3 dots appeared. Asterisk, please. Asterisk, 10 minutes later I was standing outside my apartment building wearing a hoodie over pajamas, questioning every life decision that brought me there. Then I saw her car. I walked over. She rolled down the window and smiled. Get in. I stared at her. You're insane. Possibly. I got in anyway. Terrible decision-making skills. Absolutely terrible. She drove for almost 15 minutes without telling me where we were going. Eventually we stopped near a quiet overlook outside the city where lights stretched across the distance like tiny stars. For a second neither of us said anything. Then she looked at me. I come here when I need to think. I looked at her. About what? She shrugged. Everything. Her voice sounded quieter than usual. Different. I turned toward her slightly. Are you okay? She stared out the window for a few seconds, then smiled. But it wasn't a real smile. Can I ask you something? I nodded. She looked down at her hands. Do you think people can like someone at the wrong time? My chest tightened immediately. Actually tightened. Because suddenly every possible answer felt dangerous. I laughed nervously. What kind of question is that? She looked at me, and for some reason her eyes looked sad. I'm serious. Silence. Complete silence. I looked out toward the city lights because suddenly I couldn't look at her. Then quietly I said, I think timing ruins a lot of things. She stared at me. I could feel it. Then she whispered, yeah. And something about the way she said it made my stomach drop. Because suddenly I had this strange feeling. This horrible feeling. Like there was something important standing directly in front of me. And I still couldn't see it. Then her phone lit up. I looked down without thinking. Just 1 second. Just one accidental second. And my entire heart stopped. Because on the screen was a notification. A message. And beside it a heart. I miss you already, red heart. My eyes moved up slowly. Then toward her. She quickly grabbed her phone. Too quickly. Way too quickly. And suddenly one thought hit me harder than anything else. Wait. Who was that? For a second I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe I read it wrong. Maybe my brain had decided to create problems where there weren't any. But then I looked at her face. And I knew. Because people only grab their phones that fast when they don't want you seeing something. The air suddenly felt different. Heavier. Neither of us said anything. She looked down at her screen for a second, then locked it immediately. Then she looked back at me and smiled. Except this time it felt forced. You okay? I stared at her. My brain kept replaying that message. I miss you already, red heart. I don't know why it bothered me so much. Technically I had no right to feel anything. We weren't together. We weren't dating. She never promised me anything. But feelings don't really care about logic. They never have. So I forced a small smile. Yeah. Lie. Complete lie. Because suddenly every moment from the last few weeks started replaying differently in my head. Every smile. Every late night conversation. Every look. Every tiny thing. Questions started appearing one after another. Who was texting her? Why did she hide it? Why did my chest suddenly hurt? The drive back felt quieter. Way quieter. Normally we would have talked about something stupid. Movies. Music. Random people we saw. But this time silence sat between us. And neither of us touched it. When she dropped me off outside my apartment, she looked over at me. You're quiet. I stared ahead. Tired. Another lie. She kept looking at me for a second, then nodded slowly. Okay. I got out of the car. And for some reason I almost looked back. Almost. But I didn't. The next morning I woke up with a text from her. Good morning, son. Normally that would have made me smile. Normally I would have answered immediately. But this time I just stared at it. Then put my phone down. An hour later, asterisk, are you alive? Asterisk, then another. Asterisk, did I accidentally offend you? Asterisk, then another. Asterisk, hello. Asterisk, I looked at the messages for a long time. Because suddenly I realized something weird. She noticed when I pulled away. Every time. Every single time. And that should have made me happy. Instead it made me nervous. Because I still couldn't shake that feeling from last night. Something wasn't adding up. Something felt hidden. Then 2 days later everything finally fell apart. I was sitting in the coffee shop waiting for my order when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned around smiling. Then immediately froze. Because she wasn't alone. She was standing beside another girl. A really pretty girl. Dark hair. Leather jacket. One arm casually wrapped around her shoulder. My stomach dropped instantly. And then the girl kissed her cheek. Not dramatically. Not slowly. Just naturally. Like she'd done it 100 times before. I looked at her. Then at the girl. Then back at her. And suddenly I noticed something worse. She looked terrified. Actually terrified. Not surprised. Not confused. Terrified. No way, the girl said smiling. You're the one I've heard about. I blinked. What? I looked toward her. She looked pale. Like all the color had disappeared from her face. The girl smiled and held out her hand. I'm Chloe. I stared at her hand. Then looked back at wait. Heard about me. Silence. Complete silence. I looked at her. She looked at me. And in that exact moment I understood. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to feel my heart sink. Because suddenly one horrible thought appeared in my head. I wasn't her secret because I was hidden from everyone else. I was her secret, and I didn't even know it. I stared at her, then at Chloe, then back at her. Suddenly every tiny moment from the last few weeks started replaying inside my head, except now everything looked different. Asterisk, you're different. Asterisk, asterisk, you make me feel calm. Asterisk, the late night drives. The long conversations. The way she looked at me. The way she always noticed when I pulled away. Everything. Except now those memories didn't feel warm anymore. They felt confusing. Because apparently there had been an entire part of the story I never knew existed. Chloe smiled awkwardly and looked between us. You okay? I realized I was staring. Oh, yeah. Lie. Definitely a lie. Then Chloe laughed. She talks about you a lot, actually. Silence. Absolute silence. I looked toward her immediately. Her face had gone completely pale. Chloe. But Chloe didn't notice. Or maybe she did. Maybe she just didn't realize what was happening. Seriously, she continued. At one point I thought I was gonna get jealous. My stomach dropped. I looked at her again. And for the first time since I met her, she couldn't look at me. Not at all. Suddenly I stood up. I should go. Both of them looked at me. What? She asked quickly. I just remembered I have something to do. Another lie. I was collecting those lately. Then I walked away. I didn't wait. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Because I already knew if I turned around and saw her looking at me, I wouldn't leave. That night my phone practically exploded. One message. Then another. Then another. Asterisk, please answer me. Asterisk, asterisk, can we talk? Asterisk, asterisk, you're misunderstanding. Asterisk, asterisk, please. Asterisk, I stared at the screen. Then locked my phone. Then unlocked it again. Then stared at it some more. Because the truth was I wanted to answer. I wanted to. I wanted her explanation. I wanted some magical sentence that made everything make sense again. But I was scared of hearing it. Because deep down I already knew something. No explanation was going to erase the fact that I had become emotionally attached to someone while standing in the middle of a story I didn't even know I was part of. 2 days passed. Then 3. No replies. No calls. Nothing. I thought avoiding her would make things easier. Instead, everything felt weirdly empty. I hated that. I hated that I missed her. I hated that I kept checking my phone. And mostly, I hated that despite everything, part of me still wanted her. Then on the 4th day there was a knock on my apartment door. My heart dropped immediately. Because somehow I already knew. I opened it. And there she was. Standing there. Hands inside her jacket pockets. Looking nervous. Actually nervous. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then quietly she said, "You really weren't going to answer me." I looked away. "You lied to me." Her expression immediately changed. I didn't. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't." She stepped closer. "I wanted to tell you." Wanted to. I looked at her. Those aren't the same thing. Silence. Her eyes dropped toward the floor. Then she whispered. I was scared. I frowned. Scared of what? She looked back at me slowly. Scared you'd leave. Everything went quiet. Because suddenly she looked completely different. Not mysterious. Not confident. Just scared. Scared and sad. I never meant for this to happen, she said softly. I didn't even understand what I was feeling at first. I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself it wasn't real. She laughed weakly. Then I started looking for you everywhere. I felt my chest tighten. I started waiting for your texts. She looked directly at me now. And then I realized I was happiest around you. Tears were forming in her eyes. Not dramatic tears. Just small ones. The kind people try to hide. I know I messed everything up. Silence. I know I hurt you. Silence. But you were never a game to me. My heart felt heavy. Really heavy. Because part of me wanted to stay angry. But another part remembered every smile. Every late night conversation. Every little moment. Then I asked quietly, what about Chloe? She looked surprised. Then suddenly she laughed. Actually laughed. I stared at her. What? She covered her face. Oh my God. What? Then she looked at me and smiled. Chloe isn't my girlfriend. I blinked. Silence. Complete silence. What? She stared at me, then started laughing harder. My cousin. I stared at her. No reaction. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then, your cousin. She was trying not to laugh now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I stared at her like I had just survived a car accident. You let me think. I didn't know you thought that. I just stood there. Because honestly I didn't know whether I wanted to hug her or throw a pillow at her face. Then after a few seconds, I started laughing too. Because suddenly all the confusion, all the overthinking, all the stress I'd been carrying around felt ridiculous. Then eventually the laughter faded, and we just looked at each other. Quietly. She smiled. That smile. The one that started all of this. Then softly she said, "So." I raised an eyebrow. "So." She looked down for a second, then back at me. "Can I stop keeping you a secret now?" And for the first time in weeks, I smiled without thinking. Sometimes the person you're scared of losing is already standing right in front of you. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and stay for the next one.